What's going on, everybody? Welcome in. Sorry, I'm about a minute late to this, so I went ahead and skipped the 30-second intro here. I see some people already piling in here, though. Gavin, Go Big Red. What's going on, Gavin? What's going on, Christian and Corey? Who's this then? Who's what? Who's what, Corey? I need to understand your question before I can answer it. But I'm going to let some people pile in here. First things first. For those that are in here, if you want to drop a like, let me know what you think. Drop your comments, leave your thoughts about the Ohio State game, maybe about your thoughts on the comments today in the press conference and stuff like that. And we're going to go through some of those questions, some of those comments and stuff like that. We're also going to go through a little bit of a recap of the Ohio State game and get into a preview of UCLA. So, a lot to go over. Of course, a big weekend this weekend coming up, and a lot to be excited about coming off of the Ohio State game. So what's going on, Dion? Appreciate you hopping in here. Again, appreciate everybody who's in here so far for joining me on the show. So like I said, I'm going to let a couple people get in here real quick, and then we're going to dive into it. 4 games left. I think Danny may get some looks. I don't know about that. I don't think he – maybe. But I don't know. These games right now, these last few games on this stretch seem like they're going to be a pretty tough stretch of games. So I don't know if we'll necessarily see Danny Kaler in any of these games, but might be for the best to just kind of get him, if they can get him in any game action, it would probably be this UCLA game, but I don't know if this offense is good enough to be able to put anybody away to be able to put him back up. So I don't expect to see him just yet, but looks like we righted the ship a little bit as always, though we were one play away. So one of the biggest takeaways from this Ohio State game is, for me, this was more indicative of the team Nebraska is, in my opinion, than last week's game against Indiana. And I'm going to get into a little bit of why I think that's the case, but I think most of us saw the Indiana game as just kind of, it was a shock to the system for a lot of us, right? It was a shock to the system for everybody around the country watching Nebraska. And I think the reason why it was a shock to the system is just because that is not what we expect from this team, because that is not kind of what this team has become. That's not the identity of this team. That is not how we know this team to be. They just, like we said last week, and kind of Jamari indicated, they kind of just put their heads down and they gave up and they were out of position a lot. And then Ohio State, I talked about the week prior, wasn't worried about the defense because they responded after the Illinois game. What did? They responded after the Indiana game as well. So, we got a response, and every single time the defense has responded. And there's a lot of it schematically that I'm going to dive into, but a lot of it also is just pure. It looked like that defense was pissed off. It looked like they were pissed off. They were embarrassed. Tony White was embarrassed. And it looked like they were fired up, motivated, ready to go. But the problem right now is the offense, and even Ohio State receiver talking about how the route concepts that, in the route concept that he saw in the interception was something that Nebraska had ran before. So it's like repeating of certain routes, and some of these tendencies are being picked up by even the defensive players. So the offense, much maligned over the week, didn't get too much better over this past week. A couple things improved, but like I said, we're going to dive into all of that here in just a second. So let me go ahead and get into your BA, man. What's up, BA? Appreciate you. Take it easy on the offense today. Only a few more swing screens away from winning more than please. Yeah, that's exactly what we need. More screens and everything. Super chats are on as always. If y'all do want to help out and donate, super chats are always welcome. Like I said, I do this full time, so it really helps me out. Also, memberships are open as well. I haven't officially fully announced it. Well, I announced it before, but I didn't have them fully set up. So the memberships are there now, but I am going to add more perks to the membership tiers. I have the Big Red Loyalist at the $2.99 tier. The $4.99 tier, I believe, is the Black Shirt Brigade, and then the $9.99 tier is 5-star corn connoisseurs. So, yeah. I got the membership tiers up, ready to rock and roll. So yeah, there's going to be more perks coming from those. But if y'all do want to become a member and be ready for that, you get emojis as well. So But again, thank you so much, BA. Appreciate you as always, brother. And if y'all want to go check out his stuff, be sure to do that. Always good stuff over there. Indiana was like getting slapped in the face hard by your pastor when you're expecting a communion wafer. But the thing about it is too is when this rebuilding process was happening, peaks and valleys, right? There's the lows, right, are still going to be there in this year, in year two, as we expected. Again, I just think a lot of us kind of got this, and naturally so with the national media also getting a little bit ahead of themselves, coming into the season talking about the early slate of games and everybody talking about 6-0 and potentially 7-0 going to Ohio State. And then, Indiana's the sexy team, Nebraska, coming into that game, had a loss then and they lose that game and then they kind of like lose that luster, right? But I think the biggest thing that in year two, this wasn't supposed to be a playoff year. And I know kind of the conversation turned into that earlier on this season, how things went, and how things were going. However, this season was never meant to be a playoff season, Big Ten championship season. This was meant to be a season of turning the corner. And then that way we can fully kind of turn the corners in year 3, 4, 5 under Matt Rule. And I think this is what we're starting to see. And Matt Rule even indicated as much in his post-game press conference where he talked about the championship mentality in the locker room and the fact that he saw that for the first time. And in a way, it's almost as if the Indiana game was just a punch in the mouth and a feeling that these guys don't want to feel again, right? These guys are tired of losing. They're tired of being embarrassed. And I think we finally saw that edge to them in the way they responded. The way they responded against Ohio State is a way that I have not seen them respond in a long, long time in terms of just pure player effort across the board. The effort was there. The defensive line was firing off of the football. In the Indiana game, it looked like once the backs got against the wall, they were about a half beat late on everything, right? Indiana did a good job of spreading out the field. What Indiana did very well is Indiana normally targets the middle of the field, right? But when they played us, they targeted the sidelines as well. And you saw them throw the 50-50 balls up towards the sideline. And, we had good coverage on them on occasion. But at the same time, their receivers were going up and making better play on the ball, and Curtis Rourke was putting it where they could get it. Now, that spread Nebraska's defense out and to the point where, they were dictating where our defense went versus us dictating where we go. And that's where the issue lies with this defense. It happened against Illinois and it happened against Indiana. Those are the two games where this defense was on their heels. And like I said, both times they responded, but each time I think we learned a little something different. But each time also Tony White adds a little different element to his defensive game plan. And so seeing the adjustments that he's made over time too, from Illinois to Rutgers to just, putting an extra hand in the dirt or getting more guys in that front. And then to last week to just kind of changing the gap schemes and how we're attacking and changing the fronts and overloading, certain sides of the formation and just firing off the football. And it seemed like Nebraska's desire to make a play was stronger than Ohio State's. It seemed like Ohio State's offensive line was on their heels. It just, if Nebraska could score some points, it'd be fantastic. But let me go into some of your comments here. Christian, what's going on, Christian, man? Appreciate you hopping in here. I'm a Nebraska-born Huskers fan who currently lives in Houston, Texas. Let's go. You stole the Twitter name that I wanted before I knew I wanted it. My bad, Christian. I was sitting there. I was like, because I made mine in August of 2023, so I wasn't sure what to name it. But yeah, man. Nice. I mean, nice to know that there's a pretty good contingent of Husker fans still out in Houston, though. I know there's a lot out. I'm in AZ now. I moved out to Arizona a few years back, but there's a huge alumni group here called Huskers in Arizona. There's about 7 Husker bars in this valley, in this area, that are dedicated towards Nebraska. And whenever the games come on Saturday, essentially what they'll do is they kind of make the whole, they section the place out, or they really just, the bar becomes for Nebraska fans and for the alumni group. So nobody's there unless you're there for the watch party. And it's kind of first come, first serve that fills up quick. Some of the places we have balloons on the back of the chair where we would let them go. But yeah, so Nice to know that there's still a big contingent of Husker fans on Houston too. I think our wide receivers are running really poor routes, in my opinion, is hurting Dylan. There's some timing stuff too. I will say that there is some timing stuff. I brought some of it up last week, but yes, some of the timing stuff, and some of the timing stuff I do think is just a little bit of with Dylan. There are times where I think he's just a half beat late, and I don't think it's his fault necessarily. I think right now he's still, you got to think earlier this season when Dylan wasn't taking a lot of hits, taking a lot of pressure, right? And he was just letting it rip, free reign, right? But the Rutgers game, he started taking some hits, right? He kind of took a little bit of a beating, started to take a little bit of beating in that Rutgers game. And then we move forward, to the Indiana game, and coming off of that week and him taking those hits and the offense being a little bit of out of sorts and stagnant. I think the biggest thing coming into Indiana was going to try to be to get him in a rhythm, because he was feeling such out of a rhythm, out of sorts. And of course that wasn't able to happen. So I think a lot of it was it's him thinking and trying to do a little too much himself. And now I know he defended the play calling today, saying, Satterfield's not the one who goes out and executes these plays, but just knowing what I know from offense and how to attack defenses, the systems that we're using and the things that we're doing are not creative enough or playing to our strengths enough still. One thing I will say, like I'll get into in just a second, average depth of target did improve a little bit, right? So we were seeing the ball a little bit more downfield, not fully downfield, but what I'm talking about what average depth of target is, for those that don't know, it's a stat that tracks how far the ball travels, air yards, basically, how far the ball travels in the air per target to a receiver. So let's say you target Fedoni, 5 times, but you're at the goal line, he's at the 10-yard line, and you throw it to him 5 times and you complete it 5 times. That's an average depth of target of 10. Even if he runs for 20 yards, your average depth of target is still 10 yards, because that ball traveled 10 yards in the air, just so y'all know what that means. And so when that improves by a little bit, that is actually significant, because typically the average depth of target, a yard of difference is a fair, jump in regards to that, because again, that's just the how much the ball is traveling in the air. And it seemed like each level, whether it be short, intermediate, deep, that increased for Nebraska. So at least there is an element of that, kind of pushing the ball a little further down the field. However, it's the red zone play calling, and the screens and jet sweeps. Yeah, we know. That's what's happening in the red zone, though. That is where we are dying out right now. Is between the 20s, we seem to be okay. Inside the 20s, not so much. What's going on, Jackson? Appreciate you hopping in here. I said it on every platform I'm on. I know the cop-out answer, but I won't truly know how I feel about the Ohio State game until I see it perform against UCLA, if that makes sense. Yeah, it does. But I was saying I was going to judge it off the response to the Indiana game, because that's to me, that's what truly shows what this team is made of, is how they respond after that embarrassment in a week where, the OC was getting chastised and the whole team was getting beat down and the defense was getting beat down. For them to respond like that quick reset mentality of the defense is what gives me a lot of hope. But yeah, that's fair. I got Indiana over Ohio State. I can't do that. I just, Ohio State is still the better team. Ohio State's 3 deep at every position. Indiana's a fun story. I think they can, of course. But Ohio State's the better team by a pretty fair margin. In my opinion, still, just because, like I said, they have the depth. Ohio State has the talent and they have the depth. And I think Ohio State's still kind of in a prime position to win that game by a couple scores. And now you got to look at this. Ohio State's got this on film as well, and they're going to respond from this probably as well. So they're going to see some stuff on the film that came up in this game that can make them better going forward. And one of the things that makes Ohio State so good is that they don't stay down, right? The Oregon loss, coming off of that, they come into this game and they come out a little flat. I don't think I expect them to be flat 3 weeks in a row. They're not playing them till down the road, but or a couple weeks. So what Wait, when is it? Is it this weekend? Is it next weekend? But either way, I still think like Ohio State, yeah. But the odds of them winning are much greater now. But yeah, I still can't do that. I still think it's like everybody's just like, this is the sexy fun pick. Ohio State has just been so good for so long that everybody's like, okay, like it's Ohio State, it's boring. But like now we have Indiana, and we're like, okay, it would be nice if Indiana can go and pull an upset and maybe be in the top 5 instead of Ohio State. I think that's kind of what we're getting into with that. H-Town, yes, sir. H-Town holding down. They don't know what that means. Husker fan, grew up in Lincoln in North Carolina, repping all over the country, man. Love to see it. Don't also misreads the defense at times, misses open receivers. But yeah, yes, that is true. Yeah, I'm not exonerating at all. I think a lot of him missing receivers too is him tightening up and being a little bit just like I said, thinking, because when you're thinking, you're tight, and he's not trusting his mechanics. And typically, when you're releasing that football, you want everything to flow. Everything's got to be loose. Everything's got to flow. And you just kind of let it, you flick it, and kind of work on your follow through, make sure you turn that thumb over and all that. But like when you're thinking, right, you're really, everything's going to be tighter. Your arm's going to be tighter. So that ball's just not floating. You're gripping it a little tighter, your adrenaline's pumping. So you're pushing it out a little further. Like, so those are things that he needs to dial in. And I think as he gets more comfortable, and I think as the offense gets him more comfortable, and if Satterfield is able to get more of a flow and a rhythm in offense, that can help some of these overthrows as well. But yes, he does need to start hitting some of these guys, because there are some wide open guys that it's, yeah, like a couple times last week. Yeah. I saw one play where Ohio State brought one more pass rusher than we had blockers. Dylan had a free ball out to Barney over the middle when he was hot. Not sure where it broke down for Dylan on that play. Yes, let me see. So one play where brought one more pass rusher and we had blockers. Dylan had a free ball out to Barney over the middle when he was hot. Not sure where it broke down for Dylan on that play. Yeah, so one of the biggest things, and one of the things that UCLA's quarterback Ethan Garbers is good at, is actually identifying those things, those blitzes, and where they're coming from. And I actually talked about last week, when they run cover 0 or something like that. One of the things that Dylan needs to get good at is understanding, like, okay, we're bringing pressure off of, let's say we're bringing pressure from the slot cornerback spot, right? We have a receiver lined up in the slot. Well, now that linebacker is going to have to rotate over to that slot guy. So you got a split second window of that guy having to rotate over to be able to just whip it out to him real quick, right? Make a hot read, be like pressure, boom, get it out to him before that linebacker can cross over, and just throw it where the pressure's coming from. And so, yeah, that is something, those hot reads is something that, we're going to see a lot of from Ethan Garbers this weekend, because I do believe we're going to get a lot of pressure on him. And like I said, that's something he's good at. Taco Tuesday, hope I didn't miss out on Nebraska Voice College Football free tacos, man. I don't know if y'all want free tacos from me. I ain't handing them out. But I'm in Arizona, so there are a lot of good taco places out here, though. I notice that every time Dylan overthrows wide open touchdowns, it seems to be off his back foot. Not sure if to look back again to confirm. So one of the things to know about Dylan's mechanics is they are slightly unorthodox as it is. With Jeff Christensen, the quarterback coach, he's very, very focused on that lower body and keeping that back knee kind of, up in kind of I'm having a hard time describing it. It'd be easier to show it to you, but keeping that left leg not too back, not to where you're too squared, trying to keep it bladed and really kind of following through with that. But I do think some of the stuff that if he just does sit a little bit more on his base, and really just kind of go through the motions and of him being just a pocket quarterback as opposed to trying to throw off platform and stuff like that, I think that will serve him pretty well. So, and you don't want to get him too used to throwing off platform when he doesn't have to, right? Because naturally you're not going to be ever as accurate off platform. Famous Fong Wei in the house. Fong Wei is always here. Fong Wei. Used to live in North Carolina too. Huskers represent from all over the country. Yes, sir. We also know Dylan keeps peer recruiting O-linemen. Yep. Indiana on break week before Ohio State game. Ohio State has Purdue and Northwestern for that game. It could be interesting. Miss Taco Tuesdays. Abelardos. All right, so let's go ahead and let me just go ahead and dive into some of this stuff. Now, one of the things too that I did see from the Ohio State game, and I want to point this out to you, if I can get these screenshots to open here, but I went back and I looked at a couple of screenshots from the or a couple of there was a route that came open on both plays, and I don't know why it's not loading here. So I'm just gonna actually just like add it to my StreamYard so I can just show it to y'all real quick. But this is one thing that Nebraska um, should be aware of. So we got these two routes here, and these two are going to be pretty much identical. I can pull it up. Sorry. Okay, there we go. I'm going to load both of these in here. So I want you to see, first off, it's going to probably cover me up here. All right, now let me remove myself here. I'm just going to both of those plays were wide open. I'm trying to open the screenshots, and it's not letting me. My computer's just not cooperating ever. But so like there's certain things that are still showing up on film defensively that Nebraska can improve. And like that's week over week that's happened. So there's still some things that need to be cleaned up on the defensive side of the ball. But one of the biggest things that against Indiana that we didn't do and that put Nebraska on their heels early, stop the run. Right. I tweeted the night before the Indiana game. Everybody was talking about Curtis worked this, Curtis worked that. My thing was, you got to stop the run. To beat Indiana, you're going to have to stop the run. What did they come out doing the first drive? They started running the ball down our throats. What did Nebraska do against Ohio State early? Stop them on a 4th and short running the ball, right? That is where Nebraska established the line of scrimmage, right? They established the line of scrimmage. They didn't let it be dictated on them. And that is the difference between getting blown out by a good team and hanging in with a good team. It's you establish your spot on the defensive side of the ball. This is where we're going to be, and we're going to dictate where you go. You're not going to dictate where we go, that type of deal. And that just drastic difference right there. And that in the Indiana game, Nebraska was within the 15-yard lines 3 or 4 times. Now, one of them, the fumble. The other one was a interception that was basically ran back to the other side of the 30, right? So there's points that were there for Nebraska that also flipped the field and ended up as touchdowns for Indiana. I'm saying that to say that game got out of control, and I don't want us to focus too much on that score. I want us to look at the Ohio State game as more of an indication of what this team is, because I think that's more so what this team is. Now, let's go ahead and let's run through some of the numbers here. Now, against Ohio State, Nebraska had 285 yards passing, or 221 passing, 285 total, 11 first downs, and they're 1 of 10 defensively on third down. I'm sorry, that was Ohio State stats. They had 221 passing, 11 first downs, 1 of 10 on third down. Okay. Now, that right there started with stopping Ohio State's run. When I did a film review on Ohio State, what they do is they do a ton of different zone run concepts, or just anything. They run a lot of inside, outside zone, but they run a lot of whams. They run a lot of traps, right? They set everything up with their running game. And the Iowa film showed that a lot, right? Because everything they did was to move, they would move the defense to the right side of the field with the run game, and then they would throw left, or they'd move left with the run game, and they'd move the pocket right. And when Nebraska took that element away from them, that's what slowed their passing game down then, because they couldn't move the defense. They couldn't then say, okay, we're going to stretch the defense out this way, but we're going to have a couple routes go this way. We're going to wrap back around this way. That wasn't there for them. UCLA is a team that likes to pass the ball a ton. They don't really run the ball a lot, and they don't run the ball effectively when they do. So this is an opportunity here for Nebraska to have a chance to really be able to get after the quarterback. Curtis Rourke, we were not able to get after Curtis Rourke. One, because he got the ball out of his hands quickly. Two, he established a run game, and Nebraska wasn't able to pin their ears back. Simple as that. And then if you start bringing blitzers, you're moving more and more guys out of pass protection, right? So then you have to try to do it with your defensive line. But our defensive line was constantly out of position as well. So what do we got from UCLA? All right, so like I said, they don't run the ball very, very well. Eric Bieniemy is their OC. We know Eric Bieniemy is a good offensive mind, right? Good offensive coach. They do have some talent on that team, and they are getting better. I will say that. They are improving week over week. They just had a 34-32 win over Rutgers, I believe it was. So, defensively, a lot that's left to be desired. They don't get after the quarterback a ton. So they pass with some success. The pass blocking it's been bad, and it improved, and it has improved with each and every single game over the season for UCLA. But there's still a lot to be desired. It's still a struggle. Nebraska is going to have an opportunity to put pressure on Ethan Garbers, probably potentially without having to send a lot of blitzes or without having to send a ton of guys, which in that instance will put Nebraska in a very good position to be able to force turnovers and or be a little bit more aggressive on the defensive side of the ball, because then you have more elements at play, right? When you don't need to commit as many people to the run game, then you can have a couple more free rushers. You can have more free dogs. Let's say you've got 6 men in coverage and you have 2 guys. Now you can get creative with what you want to do with them, because you don't necessarily fear the run game if you can stop that with your defensive line up front, which Nebraska has been able to do in most games this season outside of the Indiana game. Illinois, they stopped for the most part, but Illinois started getting those gashing runs in the second half because they committed to that. So UCLA -7 in the turnover margin. So they're not a team that's going to, win the turnover battle against you. They don't force a ton of turnovers. They do turn the ball over a pretty good bit, and their pass rush isn't great. So this is an opportunity here where Dylan's going to have time in the pocket. And I think this is, I said that earlier about the off-platform stuff. I think this is a game where Dylan's going to have the chance to be able to finally kind of settle in the pocket and be able to kind of just hit some of his receivers and just get into some of these timing routes, right? Really start to just really kind of work some of these timing things and hopefully add some elements to this passing game that we didn't have before, the short intermediate passing game that needs work, that needs to be utilized more. And again, the stuff to the edges just isn't working. The edges are not working mainly because I don't know if there's enough creativity even in our screen games and stuff like that, because how quick the defenders are triggering downhill on these screens leads me to believe that there's some kind of tell in this, because they're triggering downhill before any of our perimeter guys can even get their punch out to lay a block, or they're just a half step late doing it. I don't know if it's a timing thing on the receiver's part. I don't know if it's a timing thing on the quarterback part, because that's a question that Satterfield would have to answer. But something is not right there, because again, they are triggering downhill. It's like they're seeing it on film and then they just trigger downhill, which leads me to what that Ohio State receiver said about some of the route concepts Nebraska's running being the same repeat patterns that they've ran earlier this season that they saw on film. Now, one thing I will say, Maliki Matavo is the tight end for UCLA. That's a guy we're going to need to look out for. They use him the most in the passing game. They use him a lot in the middle of the field. So they are a team that's going to target the middle of the field. They're going to try to bring you down and kind of get your linebackers down. And then they're going to try to come over the top a little bit, but for the most part, they keep it kind of in that underneath range. When it comes to running the ball, Ethan Garbers, he had a long run against Rutgers. He can run the ball. He's pretty athletic and he can make you miss. However, I don't think he runs enough to have a dedicated spy. So I don't think we'll have to have an extra body unless he gets loose a couple times. Then we might add that element in. But their running backs, they use their running backs for a ton of kind of swing passes, dump passes. That's one of the things that stood out to me the most so far. And right now, I'm working through their older film. I haven't got the Rutgers UCLA film. I requested that, so I'm trying to get the Rutgers UCLA film, but from previous weeks. And then when just going back and watching the Rutgers game with the broadcast, seeing what I could see. Not a big fan of just watching the broadcast to get, but the dump downs are there. They do like they will check it down. They will take what the defense gives. They will take the underneath, which is where Nebraska's tackling has to be improved. And tackling was great last week for Nebraska. It was one of the better performances we had tackle wise in a long time. And that was another aspect of the Indiana game that we didn't do well, is tackle well. So, now going over more of the offense, TJ Harden he leads the team at 26 receptions. Now he's a running back. Okay. So he has 26 receptions. And then they have Keegan Jones. Yeah. He's got about, I think, like 13 catches or so, but he's quick, right? He'll get the ball and he can accelerate quick and get up to speed quick. And then Logan Loya, the receiver, they like to use him a lot in the red zone. So those are the guys on the offensive side of the ball for UCLA that we need to be on the lookout for. And let me go ahead and dive into some of y'all's comments. I see him backing up in here. So at least we hit our goal with 4 yards per play. Heard our running back recruiters playing lights out as Missouri high school games. Yes, 100%. Yes, he is going to be a stud. I did a film review on him before. I'll probably be doing some more recruiting film studies here in the coming weeks as well. John Uhall made some incredible kicks. Yeah, I think a lot of fans were impressed by him going for 3 for. Couldn't be more impressed. Corey, fix your screen, man. Was I gone? Oh, my bad, y'all. How long was I gone for? Yeah, I want to just hop in here. Let me know how long I was gone. How long you couldn't hear me for? Sorry. Oh, I see what you're saying. Oh, it cut my audio off. That's weird. I unmuted it for that when I brought my screenshots up. Okay. Well, let me pull them back up then, and let me see if it'll keep me unmuted this time. All right. So let's try this again. Nah, it's still going to do it. Whatever. But on those screenshots, what I was trying to show you is those 2 routes, right? Because the one of my screenshots is getting cut off. For some reason, I'm clicking to open it, and it's not opening it on my computer. Go figure. But essentially, those 2 routes were the same routes that came open up the seam, right? So one of them on the Ohio State game, their receiver, he kind of ran kind of an out, and then this receiver is kind of coming around and up the seam. Okay, against Indiana, they had a receiver run and go and kind of stop with a little hitch, and then they had that same inside receiver, that slot receiver, go up the seam, and that one came wide open. But Jamari Butler was able to make the sack prior to him being able to get the ball off. Against Ohio State with Jeremiah Smith, they weren't able to get the pressure there. That ball comes wide open for a touchdown. So that's one of the opportunities there that I think this Nebraska needs to work on film, is that attacking of the seams, because that's 2 weeks in a row that we've seen a route come wide open on just that seam route there. So, and I appreciate everybody let me know that I was gone for a second. UCLA's run defense is very good. Yes, they do have a very good one of the top 15 run defenses in the country. The schedule so far, they have no choice but to improve. I mean, they must have had the most difficult schedule in all of college football. It's not been easy, but we need different blitz checks, throw more jump balls to Banks and Nair. I think instead of more jump balls to Banks and Nair, I do feel like we could use that a lot more in the red zone, especially. Like, I don't understand why we're not using Banks and Fedoni, like use those guys' height in the red zone, and why we're not throwing, at least trying to throw a fade, back corner fade, something like that. We're just trying to run. We're just trying to run. So definitely do, and the blitz checks for sure. Yes, absolutely. I think one thing right now is we're not keying on those pre-snap reads. We're not keying on pressure's coming from here. I need to be alerting to this guy, and I need to have, somebody hot route ready to go. But these are things; those are things that I think will come in time with Dylan. He's got a lot on his plate right now too, but I do think these things kind of are slowly but surely getting better. But yes, we need a lot of work on that for sure. Where's the counter to the 11? Wait, see, where's the counter to the 11 or whatever screens? Fake wheel on the last drive to win the game. Any kind of creativity. Where is the counter to the 11 or whatever screens? Fake wheel on the last drive to win the game. Any kind of creativity. I think you're just, sorry if I'm not understanding the question. Just like kind of what is the problem with the creativity, or where is the issue with it? If you want to just kind of just confirm what you mean by that, so I can make sure I answer it properly. I like Dylan's off-platform abilities. His flash is mega talented, but you're right. His first choice should probably be something not off-platform. 100%. No matter what. Like everything, most things that link the kinetic chain from the lower body up are about, being loose, being relaxed, and going through your fundamentals and balance, right? But it all hinges on balance, because if it starts from your feet up, the only way for you to generate any of that through your hips, to generate even leverage and to be able to generate full power, full leverage, is you have to have your hips as a solid base. That's where everything starts. Your core, your hips, right? And if you're not balanced with your hips, if you're leaning forward, then odds are you're going to probably, if you're leaning on your toe, the odds are you're out in front, and you're going to be probably throwing the ball and maybe sailing a little bit. Whereas if you're sailing backwards, that's when you see the ball kind of get lofted up and it floats up too long, it'll fall short, right? That's where the balance comes in. And if you, now those are the extreme ones, but if those are a little bit off, if you're a little bit out in front of yourself, right? That little extra couple inches can make all the difference between that overthrow and not. It's just really about just getting that same follow through each time, keeping that opposite hand up. And you'll see Dylan, he you can tell he's been taught this whole method of keeping this up, because he has that little phone thing going. If you watch his follow through or see any still pictures, he's like that. And I think a lot of times when players get comfortable being able to make the off platform throws, I think they do just become a little bit, I guess, too quick to go to that. And I think that's one of the things that he's going to learn in time, is just, and I think some of it's due to, maybe just happy feet. Glenn Thomas says it all the time: calm feet equal calm mind for a quarterback, right? And so if your feet aren't calm, then you're going to be off balance and you're going to be off platform. And that's why I think some of this too is due to the fact that there are some, he's taking some pressure, he's taking some hits. And, occasionally got a little happy feet, occasionally got a little stuttering of his feet, a little choppy with his feet, and occasionally a half step late. There was a route with Fedoni over the middle in the Indiana game where if he throws it a half beat early, Fedoni's probably got a first down, but instead he throws it about a second later, and then he has to break a tackle from the edge rusher, and then Fedoni stopped on the right side of the field instead of running across like he was. And he's not able to get up and get the first down. Nebraska turns the ball over on that. Those little things matter for sure. Let's see. Never coached, but if the DBs are watching the line and receivers, we need to have one or two hang back and send our fastest dude downfield on our bomb. So if the DBs are watching the line and receivers, so if the DBs are watching the receivers, odds are they're in man coverage. If they're watching into the backfield, odds are they're probably in zone coverage. But so I think if you're saying for our DBs, so I with, for instance, like the Gifford play, where Gifford got beat on that deep touchdown to the left side when he seemed like cover two, where we had two deep safeties up high, the two deep halves, and Gifford kind of bit down a little bit, and then that other safety, that backside safety, wasn't able to rotate over in time because Gifford kind of bit down on the underneath route, and that out route kind of ran up. And so when it comes to the defensive side of the ball, if you're talking about our defensive side of the ball with that, one of the biggest things that our defense needs to do, like the key to a 3-3-5, especially with this high risk, high reward style of defense is your eyes always have to be on the ball, right? Like when the play's going, your eyes are on the ball because even more so than in a 4-3, 3-4, these 3-3-5s are much more risky because you do end up a lot of times in a lot of man coverage situations, but also like it's unorthodox for a reason, right? You end up with a lot of one-on-ones, and that's why you have to be very careful to not jump ahead of a route unless you can get both hands on the ball, because odds are there's probably not somebody behind you. So that's part of the risk reward of this defense is sometimes that's going to happen. It's just kind of ironing those kinks out. But for us, with if their DBs are watching us, I think what we're doing, what we have to do is, because right now they're able to just kind of sit back, right? And they're even able to kind of bring guys down a little bit, and we're not able to take them out of it. Part of that starts with the creativity of the play calling, though, to be able to take them out of it, because that Gifford play where Gifford steps down, like that's route concepts, right? That's route concepts that are bring the eyes away from them. So we got to bring their eyes away from it with misdirections, motions. We're not doing motions. We're not doing misdirections. And that's what other teams are doing very well. When you start motioning guys, you put a lot of stress on the defense, right? Especially if they're in man coverage. If you got, let's say, like Colorado, one of my big keys against Colorado was to kind of tire Travis Hunter out. And one of the ways that you can kind of do that, get motion going and make him run back and forth across the field, right? You also identified their man coverage. It also makes it harder for them to come all the way across and be able to guard that, right? And so in those instances, Nebraska does need to use a lot more motions to get the eyes mixed up and to get their eyes away from where we want them to be. And so that way, we can execute our offense. And I think that starts with the creativity, getting our guys downfield on a bomb. I think that starts with the creativity. For the screens. Oh, so this one's for the screens as well. Two hangback center fast to do downfield on the bomb. Yeah, that one. So for the screens right now, that one's more so when they're keying on that, because I'm not sure what they're triggering downhill on those, but a couple of instances of those too. I feel like we need to have a second option there, because there was one of those throws where Dylan threw it and the guy was basically already getting tackled when we were kind of inside the 15-yard line. He threw that screen and basically the dude was already tackling him. He basically threw him into the tackle. I think that's another thing too, is we limit ourselves limit our options when we just kind of go. It's the same with jumping over at the goal line. Dowdle jumping over at the goal line. Well, as soon as you leave the ground, you lose all of your leverage. So why are we jumping there? You have one shot to make it over. Almost went to Eminem song there for a second. You got one shot, one opportunity. No, Jameis Winston. But you jump over. If you don't get that, your forward progress is stopped. That's fourth and goal. And that's another thing too, is just, understanding situations and playing situational football better and complementary football better. But yeah, for the screens, depending on the style of screen, there's a lot of things broken with them. Looks so damn good when we throw the balls over the middle down the field. Yeah. And so with that too, we have like this tendency to really not set those deep passes up. Like, earlier in the season, we weren't really setting those up. And part of me looks back at the Colorado game, right? If we look at that game and because I know people were talking about like, oh, has our offense regressed or whatever since then? Looking back, I don't necessarily know if it has, because if you look at that Colorado game, right, that Ramir Johnson touchdown was kind of a tipped, ball that was sketchy pass, right? And then we had a pick six. So like, if you think about that, outside of those two, 14 points, right? In certain situations like that. So, and a lot of what we had success on early in the season was deep balls to the outside when we had man coverage on Nair and Banks and we're drawing PIs, those type of things, that we had a lot of success on those early in the season. It seems like we're not getting those situations anymore, right? And that's why I feel like this offense is stalling. I feel like maybe we had a false sense of what this offense was in a couple of those games early this season, and now it's kind of starting to set in. But yes, throwing the ball over, utilizing the middle of the field is key, especially in a game where so many teams run cover two. You have to be able to utilize and target the middle of the field. And when you have routes there, you need to be able to time them up to be able to get them in the middle of the field. When you're in man coverage, run some crossers, get something, get play action crossers going, get some crossers going over the middle. Just it doesn't have to be super complicated. It's just moving the eyes, moving the defenders where you want them, and then exploiting that and finding those holes and gaps in the coverage. I just don't think we have the creativity from our offensive coordinator right now to take advantage of a lot of those situations. Screen can be our version of play action if they're biting too hard. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like maybe like the tunnel screen to Ramir against Rutgers, where we faked it one direction and threw it back the other, but he kind of came up the middle with it. Why aren't we doing more tunnel screens like that? Where the ones up the middle, that one worked. Those seem to have worked, the middle ones. It's the outsides that aren't working. And there's other ways to spread the defense out as opposed to just going to outside plays over and over that aren't working. So Dylan threw a nasty back shoulder 70-30 ball to Banks early in the season. He can do it. We just haven't tried it in weeks. That's what I'm saying. Well, I don't even know why we went away from that. I think anytime we have a one-on-one man coverage matchup, even if it's especially if it's press man on Nair or Banks, we got to try to be taking advantage of that matchup for sure. First time here live. What's going on, Huskers? Appreciate you hopping in here. And again, if you're new here, feel free to subscribe, drop a like, and let me know what y'all think. Again, I do this full time, so any help's appreciated. Just y'all as so much as a view being in here. I appreciate all y'all. So thank y'all so much. Sometimes Dylan balls look like, sorry, I just is reading. Sometimes Dylan's balls look like it's just weird. They have so much touch that they take forever to get to the receivers. To me, anyways, the too much air. Yeah, I get what you're saying though. There. I feel like there are times where I think this is another thinking thing, right? Where maybe he's starting to see like, okay, I'm overthrowing these guys, so maybe he's trying to put a little more air under the ball, and that's where the thinking comes in, and that's where I think where a lot of these missed throws are coming from, as I just think he's thinking about a little too much. So maybe he's like, I put a little more air under the ball, he'll be able to get under it now, and so I think that's a lot of what you're seeing too. And then I think there's just a couple of times where he's just not fully confident on his read or the throw. Why did Nebraska not commit to the run versus Ohio State? So when it comes to Nebraska's run game right now, I just don't like the there's a lack of creativity in the run game, with just the fact that we're using so many of the same concepts, and you have so many different variations of how to run the football. Like I said before, you have duo, you have power, you have counter, you have trap. Like you have all of these different blocking schemes and everything. And it seems like the run game that we have is so very vanilla, right? And I'll get into I could pull up our running attack here in just a second. Let me just pull up a little bit of numbers from kind of how we did in our run blocking. One thing I do want to point out before I move on too far ahead of it is I had some I did want to point out that Nebraska's pass blocking was much improved this week as well. So got to give credit where it's due there. Henry Lutovsky had a excellent game. He didn't allow one hurry, one hit, one sack. Grade as an 89. Ben Scott had an excellent game too. Same thing, 100% pass block grade. Dante Dowdle was pretty good in pass pro. Justin Evan Jenkins had one of his best games to date. And so Micah Mazuka had a good game. Gunnar Gattu, like the offensive line in general against Ohio State held up very, very well in terms of pass blocking. So I did want to point that out, that was probably one of our best blocked games against one of our toughest opponents. But here's kind of how the distribution of the runs went against Ohio State. Now let me pull this up on this screen so you can see it a little better. And this is just going to give us, put up here, where is it at? I lost it. There it is. All right. So let me pull this up, share screen. And Russian direction. Okay. So right here, you look right here, this kind of shows where we went in terms of where we ran the football. So you see here left end, and it's going to tell you up here kind of which gap it is, you know. So if we're going, you know, middle left, we're off to the left of the center, middle right, and then we got right guard, right tackle, right in, right? So you can kind of see where those lanes are at, just simplified. And if we just go by kind of attempts, and actually let's go by yards. So yards, quarterback scramble was our best. Now running to the left side, and this has seemed to be kind of a thing with us this year, running to the left side, you know, a little bit more success. We got middle right, middle left, but then when you get to the right side, you know, we're not running the ball there as much, right? And we're not running it there as effectively. And then this over here is just yards after contact on average per carry. So, you know, it's a good balance in spreading it out, but it seems like the left side of the line, we're having a lot more success when it comes to running the ball. Now, when it comes to the passing direction too, let's look at kind of the passing offense here and kind of the differences in what I was talking about earlier with the depth and stuff like that. So pass direction here against Ohio State. Now I'm going to pull this one up. So if we look right here and coming down here, so one of the things, all right, so we got, let me pull this over here so I can actually keep in front of me and kind of look at the screen still. So what you'll see here is we got kept clean, 82% of the dropbacks. He had a clean pocket. Okay. So 30 of 34, 63.3%. No touchdowns, 1 interception. Okay. Then we had the under pressure, not blitzed, 17%. When blitzed, 63%. And then you kind of see just through there. All right. Now let's get more towards the passing concepts here. It's just play action, no play action screen. So play action 19.5% of the time, no play action 80.5% of the time. Now here's where we're talking about the more specifics in terms of how we targeted the field. So deep left didn't target it. I'm sorry, target it once. Deep center 3% of the time. So these are areas that we don't target a ton. Of course, the deep part of the field, deep left, these intermediate left 9.1% of the time. So the short left is what we utilized most of the time in that game. Yards per attempt 8.7. And you'll see there just kind of a lackluster performance in terms of short left side. Now moving over short center. Let me actually zoom this out just a little bit. All right, cool. So we got our intermediate left, intermediate left at 72.6, our intermediate center at 49%, intermediate right at 54%. And then we got our behind the line of scrimmage stuff you can see down here. And this doesn't, I don't think this is all of the screens and everything. This is just stuff that was targeted behind the line of scrimmage originally. But you can see the grades here. And we did make a little bit better of an attempt in the intermediate of the field. It seemed like we had more success there. But overall, you know, not very successful across the board in passing. And it looks like a lot of our concepts are very, very similar to what previous weeks look like. You look at the time to throw here, you know, 3.5 seconds, 3 seconds. So that's pretty good. And in comparison to previous weeks. So the deep part of the field, though, 15% of the time, medium and short, 21% of the time, and the short, 24% of the time. So we're still staying in that short part of the field 24% of the time. And then the behind the line of scrimmage, we are doing a little too much. So this just gives an indication of kind of where we have our successes at in terms of the passing game. And now if I move you over to Ethan Garbers, I'm going to just kind of show you UCLA's quarterback, Ethan Garbers, and his passing direction here. So what you're gonna notice about him, and this is kind of what I was talking about earlier. He's under pressure 41% of the time, right? So that's a big number right there. And you can see doesn't throw very well under pressure. Okay, and this is 96 times, 13 scrambles out of it, 29 first downs, and a 46%. What would be quarterback rating, NFL, quarterback rating, but under pressure, not good. So this is our key right here. Get pressure on him. Now, this is what I'm talking about, though. When he's blitzed, and he's blitzed in 43% of his dropbacks, this is where I'm talking about. Like, he's good at keying on where the blitz is coming from, right? So you can see that in the numbers right there. So The best thing that Nebraska can do is try to get pressure on him without having to bring the extra bodies. So that way we can kind of sit back in coverage and or like I said, just get creative with those extra free dogs there. Now looking at just kind of how they like to operate, they play action is the most success. However, they don't run the ball a ton. So they're out of play action of 14% of the dropbacks. So 85% of the time you're not going to see play action. And it's hit or miss. Their passing game, you see right here, 5 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, 1,100 yards, 63% completion percentage. So there's a lot to be desired in their passing game. But like I said, they are getting better and better each and every single week. Now, moving over to the passing depth, you see that they operate very well in the short part of the field. And if we go down here, just look at it a little bit more in specific deep depth. So you got deep center here, targeted a lot, intermediate right of the field. That's their best, but they only do it 3.1% of the time. 30.9% of the time they go short center, though. So like I told you, they will go to the deep middle if they have to, but the majority of the time they're going to stay in that short center of the field or right at the line of scrimmage. And if they do go left or right, a lot of the times it's going to be those swing passes, that type of deal. But they're just trying to get guys and playmakers in space. Now, where I think Nebraska has the advantage in this game this weekend is, and let me pull this, where I think Nebraska has the advantage in this game this weekend is the fact that they are not going to have to counter a run. And that is where the pass rush is going to be able to have what I think is probably going to be one of their better performances. I think Ethan Garbers is going to be under pressure a lot in this game. And I think Nebraska is going to be able to do it by their fronts. I don't think they're going to have to bring 6-7 guys. I think they're just going to be able to mix up their fronts, mix up their stunts, and they're going to be that are going to confuse the offensive line of UCLA. Because while the UCLA offensive line is getting better, there's still a lot to be desired, and they do get confused, especially when you start moving guys around, mixing guys around, shifting your line. They get confused on who's on who, right? Because then you have, okay, a guy's covered in the right before the snap, he's covered. And so both guys will take this guy, you'll have a free rusher, right? So there are certain, concepts in their blocking schemes that we can take advantage of by using our, edge rushers and our defensive line and kind of bringing those stunts, kind of bringing the overs and stuff like that. So, all right, let me get a little more into your comments. WWE found success second half on the ground with Dowdle and went away from it for whatever reason. It seems that establishing the run and consistently keeping the run is just something that is still not happening. Yeah, that's the hard part of it. I was trying to use their screen pass dependence against opposing defenses. Got it. Okay. Why do we not make field goals unless Columbus, Ohio? And where did Raiola's accuracy go? Again, I don't think Raiola's issue. I don't think a lot of this is on Raiola. I do think some of it is, but I think a lot of it is just taking some of the pressure off of him. And I think if they take the pressure off of him, then he can play more loose and relaxed. And I think he's going to start hitting a lot more of those throws. So I don't think he lost it. I just think it's here. I think it's here. We finally had a kicker show out. John Hull, man. John Hull, back up the Brinks truck for that guy. Get him an NIL deal if he makes another 50-yarder this week. But it does feel good to know that we potentially could get 3 points if the opportunity arises, and teams aren't playing us, because I guess I've talked about it week after week, but there are potentials that teams could play us to just keep everything in front of them and try to make us kick field goals. So I love seeing Raiola scramble 40 yards. He adjusted the ball into his outside arm as he was running free to protect the ball. It was a great way to see him punish the defense that way. Yeah, good catch on that as well. But yeah, it was nice to kind of, and also I'm glad you brought that up because that's another good point. One thing I did see from Raiola that I talked about earlier in this season, and CJ Stroud mentioned this whenever CJ Stroud was talking about when he got to the NFL, weeks 1 and 2, he really struggled last year. I forgot week 1, but week 2 was against the Ravens. And he came out of that week 2 game and he was like, man, like I'm beat up. He's like, I can't keep doing this. And he said in that moment, what he realized is it's, and I've made this reference before. So a lot of y'all probably heard this, but talks about it being like a spot up shooter in the NBA, right? You got to know your spots. You got to get to your spots. You got to rotate to your spots before the defense rotates that spot before you get there. And what that means is when the pocket's collapsing around you, right? Take a step up, find that lane, take a step up and either step up and kind of buy you some more time or step up and run. right? And that's what he did on that one play. He stepped up in the pocket and he ran. And we saw that happen a couple of times where he would step up in the pocket. Now, another thing too is if there is a pass rush coming from the inside, rotate around and get outside to your spot, right? Rotate to that right side and get over there before a defensive end or a linebacker can rotate out to that spot and get there ahead of you, right? So it's for him, it's about learning how to get to his spots. And this was the first game where I think I've seen him get to his spots early, right? Before he was getting to them a little late. And that's why we saw him getting pressure out of the pocket. And by the time he was, throwing the ball away, he had a guy taking him down or something like that. I think finally it's starting to click where he's seeing the lane, he's seeing the pocket collapse, he's seeing the avenue open, and he's stepping up and he's taking that. And I think that's where that run came from, because he actually stepped up in the pocket, saw the lane, and took it immediately without thinking. I just cringed a little bit when I saw Dylan stiff arming with his throwing arm and left him using the legs. Yeah. That was on the long run down the left side, right? When he stiff armed that guy. Yeah, I remember that. Have to beat UCLA, cannot play at USC on a 3-game losing streak. Absolutely. Too much errander passes, maybe, but it wasn't like that at the beginning of the year. I was so excited we had a guy that could throw a bullet. Don't know how it's supposed to be facing better DBs. Again, I just think a lot of it is with him, arm strength is not a problem. And so anything that's happening with him is not an ability that's been lost. It's just something that whatever's causing that disconnect right now is he's still a 19-year-old kid at the end of the day, right? And whatever's causing that disconnect in there is something that I think, just like with last week where I said he's actually getting to his spots now, I think we're going to start to see, more of that. More of that confidence come back, more of them getting. I think that starts this week with UCLA. I think UCLA is a perfect game for Dylan to kind of get some of that confidence back and see some of those deep throws, go into their hands. When he starts knocking a couple of those throws down, gets that confidence back, I think we're going to see Dylan right back to where he was. But the thing about him, he's not turning the ball over. Right. He is missing throws. Yes, but he's not turning the ball over. He's not making a ton of mistakes that are killing us. It's our offensive coordinator. I mean, it's our play sequences, our play calling right now that's hurting him. I don't think we would be as focused on he's not hitting this throw if we would get more help from our offensive coordinator in putting drives together and getting more points on the board, because now each and every single drive and each and every single miss is that much bigger, because it's like, okay, that would have won us the game. Right. Whereas, if you got 6 or 7 touchdown drives, you miss one throw in there, you're probably not going to think back at that one throw that you missed and be like, this one, you get 3 drives potentially to score on. So any chance that you have to get a touchdown, you're going to be kicking yourself over it. So, maybe the shoulder. What's the biggest off-season need on offense? So, personally, we are going to need to get the receiver position kind of bolstered a little bit more with somebody who's going to be able to come in and be, a leader in that locker room, somebody who's a sure-handed guy. We need a guy who's going to be able to come in and take that X role. Malachi might be able to do that, but I don't know if we've seen enough of Malachi to know if he's going to be able to step into that true X role next year. So I think wide receiver is definitely something we need to attack in the portal. I always think it's good to go seek out offensive line help in the portal. I don't think it's good to build your offensive line through the portal. I think it's good to add to your offensive line through the portal. If you build an offensive line through the portal, you're going to not have a unit. You're going to have a bunch of individuals. And so the offensive line definitely needs to be a position that we attack in the portal. And I think it always is helpful to be able to find kind of some quarterback depth, as hard as that is, though, in today's college football world, because, Harburg is going to be gone, and then we're down to Danny Kalen, Dylan Raiola, and if Gramstead redshirts. But, Gramstead's not in a position to be able to play right now, so they're definitely going to have to go try to get a quarterback. But like I said, it's hard to go get a quarterback in the modern transfer portal, because typically quarterbacks in the transfer portal because they want to start somewhere too. So, but definitely, we just got to continue with the offensive line, the receiver, and maybe just add a body at quarterback if possible. Oh, you're talking about the Raiola, quote unquote injuries. So the ankle thing, man, honestly, with the ankle, that's hard to say because I had a grade 2 ligament tear in my right ankle, and ankles are finicky, right? And what I saw in that Indiana game, it looked like kind of what I have an issue with in my ankle, because mine was like 3, 4 years ago, and I still have issues. And occasionally, what will happen is like you will just sometimes without a rhyme or reason, but you'll just step on it awkwardly, and all of a sudden you'll get this stabbing pain in the side of your ankle. And every time you put weight on it, there's just like stabbing pain, stabbing pain, stabbing pain. And then kind of it subsides. And it's weird. It's weird the way it happens. It just like it's real tight for a little bit and then it kind of goes away. It almost looked like during the Indiana game, that's kind of what happened to him in that moment because that ankle bothered him and then he came back off and it was okay. Um, Now the shoulder, that to me, I would think, the shoulder looked a little bit more like it affected him kind of in the moment. The ankle seemed to dissipate pretty quickly. Um, but I think if anything's going to affect him more than the other, it's probably going to be the shoulder. I don't think the ankle has been bad enough from what I can see, or a noticeable limp or anything on film. Um, that it is causing an issue, but hopefully we can get more clarity on that. Probably wouldn't until this offseason. I doubt they'll disclose any of that. But he could have dove over to the left side of the line on that fourth down play. Couldn't believe how Ohio State pushed the right side back. Yeah. We struggle with our wide receiver block in the perimeter. I have an idea to help those quick bubble passes on the outside behind the line of scrimmage. Mazuka lines up at wide receiver. Hey, I'll tell you what, Mazuka will be able to take some dudes out over take some DBs out. I'm going to tell you, put 3 DBs on him. I'm betting on Mazuka. I think he's a freshman who's need experience and age. Would have been better if Dylan had redshirt. I don't agree with the redshirt part of that. Dylan needs these lumps. Dylan needs these mistakes. And Matt Rule has said this offseason, he said, you get better at football by playing football. And there was no shot Dylan's redshirt. You can't redshirt Dylan this year. No, he is the future of your team. You start him when he gets in here. You do. You 100% do. Otherwise, if you don't start him this season and play him this season, next year it's going to be his first season, and that's the season you're supposed to turn the corner. That's not smart at all. That's going to really, you're going to have a bad day if you redshirt him when he's supposed to be gaining experience. Yeah. Christian, and he tackles the DB since they aren't calling the offensive holding anymore in the Big Ten. Why can't we get a running back like Boise State where nobody has a running back like Boise State? This is, Ashton Genty's a whole different animal. Where they don't get tackled by the last guy and they don't get gunned down from behind. Johnson Solich used to land them like clockwork. Also, back in the day, a little bit different in terms of the line that we had back then as well. But yes, I just think that's kind of the modern college football world, right? Like you don't see a lot of workhorse backs like Ashton Genty anymore, right? You don't see a lot of guys like that. And even in Ohio State, they have Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins, 2 of the best running backs in college football, right? And those guys still, struggled against us. So it's just really hard to find a running back that can do stuff like Ashton Genty's doing, and especially in the modern, football era where the running back position is kind of turning into a little bit more of a hybrid role and is kind of devalued to an extent, not fully, but to an extent, as we know. Can we get you on the staff as a senior analyst? Man, sounds stressful, but I'd love to be on the staff. It's doing something. That'd be for sure. Redshirt Dylan, what are you talking about? Wouldn't be here. Yeah, exactly. If you guys want another great Husker show, check us out for live stream. Generation Red, they do an awesome job over there. Ken, they do great work over there. So if y'all are not already a Generation Red fans, y'all be sure to check out their stuff. Is Malachi Coleman not injured? Not like the wide receivers are going off? I don't think so. And I want to talk about what I've heard potentially, behind the scenes with Malachi. And I'm not saying that it's not like anything like bad, but I don't want to speculate because I've heard stuff, but I don't want to speculate. It's more so just about a role type of situation and just unhappiness there more so than anything. But I don't know where that's at this point, and I don't know what their plan is with him, because that is my question. Because if you want him, again, like he says, you get better at football by playing football. I feel like they would have to have involved him a lot more in the rotation this year for us to expect him to come out being starting X receiver next year. And that's why I do think we might go out and attack that in the portal. Not sure what's going on there fully behind the scenes, just kind of some of the stuff that I've heard hinted at. But again, I don't like to speculate. I don't want to start rumors or anything like that. So, but I will continue to monitor that. Will we be able to replace? I was like 0-9, 0-9 next year. It's a big portal target. Nebraska's always good. The middle of the defense shutting down around. I think we'll be fine. Nebraska has, reinforcements coming on the defensive side of the ball. Defensive line, the edges, like we are so deep there. That's the least of our concerns. Nash and Ty are great. Yes, like they are awesome. Nash is unbelievable in the nose, right? But I do think that we got some guys that are going to really make sure we don't miss too much of a beat. So I am very confident next year in our defense. And I think part of it, even to like Gifford, I love Gifford to death, but Gifford has had one of his worst seasons this year. And especially in coverage, he's been abysmal in coverage this season. And so getting a more athletic rover out there, getting a rover out there who can, be a little bit better in coverage. And I think that's going to go a long way, because your rover is that hybrid DB guy, that Gifford's going to be at safety. He's going to be, they move him kind of all over the place. He's been at cornerback for one snap, but they'll move him slot, they'll move him up, And so I think if we get somebody who's a little bit better in coverage too, I think we're going to see a lot more balance from this defense. And I think, Tony White is very confident. Willis McGahee, the fourth, was our highest graded pass rusher last week, and he's a true freshman, right? So a lot of good things on the horizon from the defensive line, from the edges, from the linebackers and stuff like that. So I'm not too concerned about it. Of course, those guys are big losses naturally, but I think we're okay. Coleman is buried on the depth chart. He needs to move up practice. Coleman is redshirting. Rule said it the beginning of the year. Yeah, that's the thing about it is, if he's redshirting, he can still play the 4 games. And the question, the question I ask is, if you're going to play him for 4 games and your offense is struggling, I feel like you would have brought him out there and just seen what you have with him. And in this last 4, my dog just scared itself on that. Sorry, I just watched my dog scare himself by leaning his head on my little black shirts thing back there. But yeah, so I think we would have tried to see what we got in him. And this last 4-game stretch is so tough. Like, where is he going to be able to come in the game if we're expecting him to play at the back half? It's not one of those things where it's like, okay, now we can start kind of, resting some guys, that type of deal, or we're going to be able to put these games away. So I still think we should have seen him at some point get in there and try to work him in a little bit. Because, and I get they used him last year out of necessity, but another year, at what point do we put him on the field and let him start, improving? That's my question there. Thoughts on Chase Lofton potentially coming to Nebraska? Great. That is fantastic news. I sure y'all saw the potential flip or the flip alert put in for Chase Lofton, originally Florida State commit. But that can't overstate how huge that is. That is massive. And Chase Lofton is a absolute stud athletically. He does so many things well. He's so versatile. He's quick. He's strong. Chase Lofton comes here. I'm so excited about that, man. I couldn't, because earlier this season, in this off season, it didn't seem like it was super likely that we're going to land some of these guys that we have, especially the in-state guys. But yeah, it's definitely good for us, for sure. And just the biggest part about it is getting guys within the 500-mile radius, locking those guys down. And if you can't get them initially, keep on them. That's huge. That's huge. I did a breakdown this offseason about the percentages of why Nebraska's recruiting has been so bad and why we haven't been able to keep people in Lincoln is because the 500-mile radius, we used to recruit that we had about 30, well, back in the 90s, there was about 40 some odd percent of the roster. Move that to the late 90s, 2000s, about 30 some odd percent, right? You get Scott Frost. Scott Frost had about 7% of his roster from the 500-mile radius, right? And guess what? Players were leaving left and right. And now Matt Rule has got that recruiting back up. As of this offseason, we're back up to, I think, 20 some odd percent. And so he's steadily improving that. That is what these 500-mile radius guys are what we need on a developmental program, because those are the guys who are going to stick with the program. Those guys are going to grow with the program. Those guys are going to be here for the long haul. Those are the guys we're going to build the foundation around. That's why these 500-mile radius guys are so extra important. So, well, all right, everybody. I have about an hour and 15 here. So I've dove into most of y'all's comments. So coming up this week, just to give y'all a heads up of what I got coming up this week, I'm probably going to have, I want to bring on the guy from Locked On UCLA. I've had him on my Big Ten show before, so probably get y'all a little bit of a UCLA Nebraska preview from both sides, from Nebraska and the UCLA side as well. And I'm also going to give y'all some film as well, a little bit of a film breakdown on, some of the stuff I see, whether it be from UCLA or whether it be from Nebraska, to kind of get y'all prepped up for this week. So y'all stay tuned for that. And again, every Tuesday, you catch me right here on the live streams. If y'all don't mind dropping a like on the stream, it really, really, really helps me out. And again, memberships are on. If any of you want to become a member, and have access to those tiers and those perks and stuff like that, and I'm going to continue to add to those as we go. So, Corey, only 7 of y'all hit the like. Come on, y'all, hit the like. Help me out a little bit here. No, for real. No, it really helps me out. I appreciate everybody who hops in here with me every week. And yeah, y'all stay tuned for the stuff I got coming up. I'm waiting for the All-22s to drop from the UCLA Rutgers game, and I'm waiting to get the Ohio State Nebraska film so I can break that down for y'all a little bit more detail, get y'all prepped up for the weekend, and hopefully Nebraska's win Saturday and trying to get bowl eligible. But I do think Nebraska has a very, very good opportunity here to become bowl eligible. I think a lot of what UCLA does well, Nebraska can counter very well, but Nebraska is going to need to establish the run. They're going to need to be able to run the ball against UCLA. Like we said before, they have a very good run defense, and that'll open up the pass because their pass defense is very, very suspect. This is a game that Dylan Raiola can 100% get into a rhythm, and I think that potentially could carry him to success the rest of the season. But I think it all starts this week. So, again, thank you, everybody, for hanging out with me. You could follow me here over at the Big Ten Show or on X at _H-Town Husker to be up to date on all the latest in Nebraska Voice of College Football. So with that being said, I appreciate everybody stopping by, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.